Stop scrolling. You need to hear this. This isn't boredom. It's that quiet weight in your chest you can't explain. The one you hide, laugh off, and only feel when you're alone at night. You're still in a relationship, but inside, something already feels broken. So you tell yourself, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe it's just a phase. Maybe if I try harder, it'll go back to how it was. But people don't leave when things start hurting. They leave when they're exhausted, drained, and don't recognize themselves anymore. This isn't entertainment. It's a warning. Before you lose yourself trying to save something that's destroying you. 1. You feel anxious more than you feel at peace. Let's not sugarcoat this. Love is not supposed to feel like a threat to your nervous system. If your relationship has turned you into someone who is constantly tense, constantly alert, constantly trying to read the room, that's not romance. That's survival mode. You wake up and before your feet even hit the floor, there's a weight in your chest. Not excitement, not calm, tension. You check your phone, not because you miss her, but because your body is looking for relief. A message, a sign, proof that today won't turn into another emotional roller coaster. At first it seems small, a late reply, a short answer, a shift in tone you couldn't quite explain. You told yourself you were overthinking. You gave the benefit of the doubt. You stayed patient. But now your mind is working full-time trying to predict her moods like weather patterns. One day she's warm, the next distant. One day I was affectionate, the next cold, and you never know which version you're going to get. So you adapt. You reread texts. You replay conversations. You analyze words, pauses, emojis, timing. You ask yourself, did I say something wrong? Even when you know you didn't. And here's the part most people ignore. Even on the good days, your body still doesn't relax. Because you don't trust the peace anymore. It feels temporary, fragile, like it could disappear with one message, one mood swing, one misunderstanding. That's not love. That's your nervous system stuck in fight or flight. Real love might challenge you, but it doesn't make you feel emotionally unsafe on a weekly basis. Sometimes anxiety isn't insecurity. Sometimes it's your intuition screaming while your heart is still negotiating. So ask yourself honestly, when you're with her, do you feel calm? Or do you feel like you have to stay careful, controlled, and ready? Because when peace disappears, you're not growing in love. You're slowly learning how to live in stress. And the longer you live there, the more of yourself you lose without even noticing. 2. You feel alone, even when you're right next to her. Let's talk about a loneliness most people don't have the courage to admit. Being single can feel lonely, but nothing compares to lying next to someone and still feeling emotionally by yourself. You sit on the same couch, share the same bed, go out together, laugh together. From the outside, it looks like a relationship, but inside, you feel like you don't actually have a partner. You try to talk about real things, the pressure you're under, the goals you're chasing, the thoughts keeping you up at night. And what do you get back? Half attention, quick replies, eyes on the screen, nods without connection. She hears your words, but doesn't feel your world. After a while, something shifts inside you. You stop opening up, not because you don't have feelings, not because you don't care, but because it hurts to feel invisible when you do. So you start carrying everything alone. Your stress, you handle it quietly. Your wins, you celebrate them in your head. Your bad days, you swallow them and move on. And then one day a painful truth hits you. You're in a relationship, but emotionally living like a single man. Because she's physically there, you tell yourself, at least I'm not alone. But deep down, you know you are. You don't feel supported. You don't feel understood. You don't feel like a team. You feel like she's around you, not with you. And that kind of loneliness changes a man. It makes you quieter. It makes you emotionally numb. It makes you stop expecting real love. You start accepting the bare minimum and calling it enough. At least she didn't leave. At least she's not cheating. At least she replies sometimes. No, a relationship isn't just about someone staying. It's about someone showing up emotionally, mentally, and consistently. If you feel lonely right beside her, that's not just a phase. That's a warning sign the connection is fading and you're slowly shrinking just to survive it. 3. Your standards drop and you don't even notice it happening. This one is dangerous. Not because it's loud, but because it's quiet. There's no big explosion, no dramatic betrayal, no single moment you can point to and say, that's when everything changed. Instead, it disguises itself as maturity, as for patience, as in try and make things work. You tell yourself you're being understanding, supportive, loyal, but look closer. You're starting to tolerate things you once promised yourself you never would. The old version of you had boundaries. The old you would calmly say, that's not okay. The old you didn't need to beg to be respected. Now you negotiate with your own pain. She's just stressed. She didn't mean it like that. Maybe I'm overreacting. It's not worth another argument. Little by little, you train yourself to accept discomfort as normal. You start choosing temporary peace over permanent self-respect. And the shift is so gradual. You don't realize it's happening until one day you catch your reflection and feel it. Something about you is smaller. You don't speak with the same certainty. You don't joke as freely. You don't express yourself without second-guessing. You hesitate more. You explain yourself more. You apologize faster. You avoid conversations that matter because you don't want tension. You swallow things that hurt because you don't want drama. You lower your standards because being alone feels scarier than slowly being diminished. And this is how people lose themselves. Not in one painful goodbye, but in hundreds of quiet moments where they stay silent when they should have stood up. Every time you ignore your own discomfort, you send yourself a message. My feelings matter less than keeping this relationship. Over time, you start believing it. And once your self-respect weakens, your behavior changes too. You start chasing more, explaining more, accepting less. You try harder to prove your worth while quietly forgetting it yourself. And here's the part most people don't talk about. Others can feel that shift. When you stop standing firm in your value, the dynamic changes. The energy changes. The respect changes. Because when you slowly abandon yourself to keep someone else, you don't just lose boundaries. You lose the version of you that knew you deserved better. For you apologize just to keep the peace. Let's call this what it really is. You're not saying sorry because you're wrong. You're saying sorry because you're scared of what happens if you don't. At first, it feels harmless. You apologize to end an argument. You apologize to calm the mood. You apologize because you care and don't want distance. It feels like love. It feels mature. It feels like a compromise. But slowly something shifts. Now you're apologizing for asking simple questions, for bringing up things that bothered you, for reacting to behavior that would upset any reasonable person. You're not apologizing for mistakes anymore. You're apologizing for having feelings. And that's when the mental trap begins. You stop thinking in terms of right and wrong and start thinking in terms of damage control. Before you speak, you rehearse it in your head. Will this start a fight? Will she take this the wrong way? Should I just let it go? Is it worth the tension? You're no longer communicating freely. You are managing emotional landmines. And here's where it gets worse. Sometimes you finally gather the courage to bring up something real, something valid, something that genuinely hurt you. But instead of being heard, it gets flipped. Now you're the problem. You are too sensitive. You always overthink. You're making a big deal out of nothing. You're insecure. So what do? You apologize. Again, not for being wrong, but for reacting to being hurt. Read that again. You start feeling guilty for your own pain. That's not peace. That's emotional conditioning. Because over time, your brain learns a dangerous lesson. It's safer to silence myself than to express how I feel. And once that happens, your voice gets smaller. Your presence gets quieter. Your needs get pushed aside. You begin to accept things that don't sit right with you. Not because they're okay, but because conflict feels scarier than disrespect. But here's the truth. In a healthy relationship, you don't have to shrink yourself to keep the peace. You don't have to apologize for existing, feeling, or speaking honestly. If you constantly feel guilty just for having emotions, that's not love growing. That's your self-respect slowly being trained out of you. And once you start believing your feelings don't matter, you'll accept almost anything just to avoid a fight. 5. The future feels heavy, not hopeful. Here's the sign most people try the hardest to ignore. Close your eyes for a second and picture your future with this person. Not the highlight reel. Not the fantasy version where everything magically works out. The real future. The everyday life. The normal mornings. The hard seasons. The quiet nights. Now be honest with yourself. Does that future make you feel calm or tense? Clear or confused? Safe or slightly trapped? Because a healthy future feels like this. Life might get hard, but we'll face it together. An unhealthy future feels like this. Even when nothing is wrong, I still don't feel emotionally safe. Pay attention to that feeling. Some people stay because they're waiting for a dramatic reason to leave. A huge betrayal. A final explosion. Something they can point to and say, now I'm justified. But the truth is, sometimes the reason is already there. You don't feel safe building your life with this person. And no milestone will magically fix that. Marriage doesn't cure emotional instability. Moving in doesn't create respect. Time doesn't repair patterns that never change. If thinking about the future feels heavy instead of exciting, that's not fear of commitment. That's your intuition trying to protect your life. Because deep down, you know commitment should feel grounding, not suffocating. The truth most people learn too late. Leaving isn't the real tragedy. The real tragedy is staying so long that you slowly disappear. You become anxious all the time. You feel alone next to someone you love. Your confidence fades. You apologize just to exist. And the future feels like a sentence, not a shared dream. That's the too late stage. And you don't need a dramatic disaster to choose yourself. Repeated patterns are enough. Yes, every relationship has hard days. Disagreements are normal. Nobody is perfect, but constant anxiety is not normal. Constant emotional loneliness is not normal. Constant self-doubt is not normal. That's not a rough patch. That's a pattern. And if there is any form of abuse, threats, or physical harm, your safety is the priority. Talk to someone you trust. Get real support. You don't have to handle that alone. You deserve a relationship where you feel calm, where you feel chosen, where you feel heard, respected, and emotionally safe. Not one where you slowly lose yourself trying to make it work. So if this hits something inside you, don't silence it. That quiet voice isn't trying to ruin your relationship. It's trying to save you from losing yourself.